The late afternoon sun cut through the grimy attic window, painting stripes of gold across a world of dust and forgotten things. Leo stood there, feeling the silence press in on him. It was the quiet of a life packed away, of stories left untold. The air smelled of old wood, mothballs, and something else. Something sweet and sad he couldn't name. He was a practical man, a man who lived in a world of spreadsheets and clear outcomes. His grandfather's passing, while sad, was a natural event. The job now was a logistical one: sort, donate, dispose, sell. He looked at the sea of shrouded furniture and cardboard boxes, a lifetime reduced to a series of tasks. It felt overwhelming, and a bit disrespectful, but he didn't know how else to do it. He started at the edges, pulling dust sheets off chairs and tables, their shapes familiar from childhood visits. A lumpy armchair where his grandfather would read the paper, a small writing desk with ink stains on the blotter. With each sheet he pulled, a cloud of dust would rise, dancing in the sunbeams, and Leo would fight back a sneeze. He worked his way towards the back, where the light was dimmer. His foot caught on something, and he stumbled, putting a hand out to steady himself. His palm landed on a heavy, fabric-covered shape against the far wall. It was taller than him and oddly bulky. Curiosity, more than anything else, made him grab a corner of the thick, gray tarp. The fabric was stiff with age. He gave it a firm tug, and it came away with a soft, tearing sound, releasing a storm of dust that made him cough and wave a hand in front of his face. As the dust settled, he saw what he'd uncovered. It was a piano, an old, upright piano made of dark mahogany, or what was left of it. The wood was scratched and dull, the veneer peeling in places like sunburnt skin. The front panel was a simple design, with a small, faded music stand. He reached out and gently lifted the fallboard, the cover for the keys. It creaked in protest. Beneath it lay the keys themselves. They were not the clean black and white of a showroom, but a mess of yellowed ivory and stained ebony. Several keys were chipped, like broken teeth in a sad smile. He pressed one of the middle C keys down. Instead of a note, there was a dull, dead asterisk thud asterisk, followed by a faint, rusty twang from deep inside the belly of the instrument. It was a sound of neglect, of loneliness. Leo wasn't a musical man. He'd taken a few lessons as a kid, hated them, and never looked back. To him, this wasn't some beautiful relic. It was a problem. A heavy, awkward, broken problem. He pictured trying to get it down the narrow attic stairs. The cost of hiring movers for something worthless. The space it would take up at the donation center. For a second, he considered just leaving it there for the next owner. But his practical nature won out. It had to go. He figured he should at least see if anything was inside the bench. Maybe there were more sheets or tools, something that would make moving it easier. The bench was stuck, swollen shut from years of humidity. He had to jiggle it, then use a bit of force to pry the lid open. The hinge screamed. Inside was mostly empty, save for a few more dust bunnies and the ghostly smell of damp felt. But there, stuck to the bottom of the bench's lid by a brittle piece of old tape, was a single sheet of paper. It must have been tucked up there, out of sight. The tape snapped as he peeled the paper free. It was sheet music, handwritten. The notes were drawn with careful, flowing lines, not printed. At the top, in elegant, old-fashioned script, was a title, *Elegy for Amelie*. The name meant nothing to him. He turned the yellowed page over. On the back, in the same ink but shakier, as if written in a hurry or by an older hand, was a short inscription. He held it closer to the window light to make out the faded words, *for my greatest treasure. Find her, *yours, always, *. There was no signature, just those words. Leo stood in the dusty attic, holding the fragile paper. The practical part of his brain, the part that had been running the show all day, had a simple explanation. A love note, a piece of sentimental clutter from someone's past. It probably had nothing to do with his grandfather. The piano was likely bought used, the paper left behind by its previous owner, but he looked from the paper to the piano. This silent, hulking thing. * for my greatest treasure. * was the music the treasure? Was Amelie the treasure? The words * find her * echoed in the quiet room. They sounded less like a romantic endearment and more like an instruction, a plea. He carefully placed the sheet on top of the piano, smoothing its edges. His earlier feeling of being overwhelmed shifted. It was no longer just about clearing a space. Now, there was a thread, a single, fragile thread leading from this dusty attic into a past he knew nothing about. Who was this for? Why was it hidden? What did his grandfather, A quiet postman who liked crossword puzzles and gardening. Have to do with a piece of music called an elegy? For the first time that day, Leo wasn't thinking about deadlines or dumpsters. He was thinking about secrets. The piano was no longer just furniture. It was a container, and he had just found the first clue to what it might contain. He decided he wouldn't call the donation center just yet. Instead, he took out his phone. He carefully laid the sheet of music on a cleared space on an old table, making sure it was flat. He opened his camera app and took several pictures, one of the whole page, and close-ups of the title and the inscription on the back. The light from the window made the old paper glow. He knew a guy from college who was really into music, a pianist who now taught at a local school. Leo wasn't one for small talk, but he opened a text message and attached the clearest photo. He typed a simple question, *Hey, found this in my granddad's attic with an old piano. Any idea what elegy for Amelie is? The writing on the back is weird. He hit send. The message whooshed away, a tiny digital probe sent from this island of dust into the modern world. He didn't start sorting through the next box. He just sat down on the dusty floor, his back against a trunk, and looked at the piano. The stripes of sunlight had moved, now highlighting the scratches on its side. The dead key he'd pressed seemed to stare back at him. The attic didn't feel silent anymore. It felt like it was waiting. Leo, the practical man, had stumbled into the first line of a story, and he found, to his own surprise, that he really wanted to know what happened next. Leo spent the rest of the weekend in the attic, but he wasn't cleaning. He was waiting. The pictures of the sheet music had been sent, but his friend hadn't replied. It was a Saturday, after all. People had lives. Leo tried to focus on the other tasks, sorting through boxes of books, bundling up old clothes for charity, but his mind kept drifting back to the piano. It stood in the corner now, the dust sheet folded at its base, no longer hidden but feeling more mysterious than ever. He found himself looking at his grandfather's things differently. A box of war medals wasn't just a collection of brass. It was a story of a young man serving overseas. A pile of postcards from different cities wasn't just paper. It was evidence of a life moving from place to place. The piano and the note didn't fit the man he knew. His grandfather had been gentle, quiet, a man of routines. He grew roses. He fixed small appliances for neighbors. He didn't play music. Leo had never heard a single note from that attic. By Sunday evening, just as he was about to give up and ordered takeout, his phone buzzed. It wasn't a text. It was a call. He saw his friend's name on the screen and answered. Leo, hey, those pictures you sent. His friend's voice was usually laid back, but now it had a wire of excitement in it. Where did you say you found this again? In my grandfather's attic, with an old piano. Why? Okay, this is going to sound strange, his friend said. Leo could hear the rustle of paper, like his friend was looking at a printout. I showed it to a colleague of mine who's into music history. The elegy for Amelie. It's not a known published piece, at least, not in any database we can find. Leo felt a small prick of disappointment. So it was just a random, original composition, a dead end. But, his friend continued, the word hanging in the air. But, my colleague got obsessed with the handwriting of the notes. The way the chords are structured. It's very specific. A particular style from a certain period in mid-20th century Europe. He thinks it might be a cipher. A cipher? Like a code. Exactly. Music ciphers were used for centuries. You assign letters to notes. Bach did it. Schumann did it. This one. It's clever. The melody line. The one for the right hand. It's simple, beautiful. But the bass notes, the left hand part, they're odd. They don't always harmonize in a standard way. They seem deliberate, like they're spelling something. Leo's grip on the phone tightened. He was standing in his own kitchen, but his mind was back in the dusty attic. What did it spell? We're not 100% sure on the full system, but we spotted a pattern right away. The first few bass notes, if you use a simple German letter to note mapping where A is A, B is B flat, and so on, they spell out HVOGEL, Vogel, German for bird. The name meant nothing to Leo. Okay. H. Vogel, a person? My colleague nearly had a heart attack. Heinrich Vogel, he was an Austrian composer, quite famous in the 1930s. Then, poof, he vanished from public life after the war. There's a lot of speculation. Some said he died. Some said he was so traumatized he stopped composing. His later works, from the 1940s and 50s, are considered lost. A complete mystery. Leo leaned against his kitchen counter. An Austrian composer. In his grandfather's attic. His grandfather, who drove a mail truck in Ohio. The pieces didn't connect. They were from different puzzles entirely. There's more, his friend said. After the name, the next sequence of notes looks like numbers, coordinates, we think. 48 degrees north, 13 degrees east. That's a location in Upper Austria, near a town called. His friend gave a name Leo couldn't pronounce. It didn't matter. The geography was irrelevant. What mattered was the connection. A name and a place, hidden in a song. Thanks, Leo said, his voice a bit hollow. This is a lot, Leo, if this is real, if this is genuinely connected to Heinrich Vogel's lost work. This isn't just a family curiosity. This is a historical find. You need to be careful with that paper. And the piano. Don't let anything happen to it. They hung up. Leo didn't move for a long time. The practical part of his brain tried to rationalize it. A coincidence. His grandfather bought a used piano that once belonged to a fan of this Vogel guy. The sheet music was a copy, a hobbyist's code based on the composer's work. It was the simplest explanation, but the words on the back wouldn't let him go. Asterisk for my greatest treasure. Find her, asterisk not remember her, asterisk find asterisk her. It was an active instruction, linked to a code that led to a specific place. He went back to the house the next day, not as a cleaner, but as an investigator. He went straight to the small den where his grandfather kept his personal papers. He'd already looked through the file cabinets for wills and deeds. Now, he looked for anything else. Diaries, old passports, letters from overseas. He found the military records in a plain brown envelope at the bottom of a drawer. His grandfather never talked about the war. Leo knew he had served, that was all. The papers were typed on old, crinkly forms. His grandfather was enlisted in the army. His role, driver. The units he was assigned to were listed, a series of numbers and letters. But it was the timeline that caught Leo's eye. His grandfather was stationed in Europe in 1945 and, importantly, asterisk remained there asterisk, as part of the post-war occupation forces until late 1946, in Austria. The breath left Leo's body. Austria. The home of Heinrich Vogel. The location in the code dot. It wasn't a coincidence. His grandfather was there. He dropped the papers and went back to the attic, his heart beating a little faster. The piano looked different now. It wasn't a piece of furniture from a local sale. It was an object with a journey. He approached it not with annoyance, but with a kind of reverence. He opened the bench again, running his hands along the inside. The bare wood, the empty space. He tapped the bottom panel. It sounded solid. He looked at the piano itself. He carefully opened the top, peering inside at the maze of strings and hammers. He saw nothing but dust and rust. Frustrated, he knelt and looked at the bench again. This time, he lifted it, turning it over. It was heavy and awkward. On the underside, amidst the cobwebs, he saw that the bottom panel was not one solid piece. There was a thin, almost invisible seam running around the edge. It wasn't for construction. It was a lid. His fingers scrabbled for a purchase. He found a small, recessed knot in the wood. He pressed it, but nothing happened. He tried to pry at the seam with his fingernails. It was stuck fast with age and maybe old glue. He needed a tool. He went downstairs and found a thin putty knife in his grandfather's toolbox. Back in the attic, he worked the blade carefully into the seam. There was a soft crack as the seal broke. He set the knife down and used his fingers. The panel lifted away. It was a shallow compartment, not more than an inch deep. Inside was not gold or jewels. It was a bundle of letters, tied with a faded blue ribbon. Next to them was a small, leather-bound notebook. Leo's hands were not quite steady as he lifted them out. He sat on the dusty floor, the piano looming beside him. He untied the ribbon. The envelopes were old, the paper brittle. The handwriting on them was the same elegant script as the title on the sheet music. They were addressed to a woman named Emilie, at an address in Vienna. The return address was just a single initial, H. He opened the top letter, the paper whispering in protest. The date was April 12, 1946. It was in German. Leo didn't speak German, but he could use his phone's camera to translate. He skimmed, his eyes catching on words and phrases the app highlighted. Asterisk, my dearest Emilie. The silence here is the loudest sound I have ever known. The new piece is our sanctuary, our child of sound. I fear the men who come asking questions, who say my music is a relic of a sick time. I have hidden our life's work. It is the only part of us they cannot touch. Trust is a rare currency, my love. I have found an honest man, a driver, who understands only kindness, not politics. He has promised to get my most precious key to safety. Leo stopped reading. He looked from the letter to the dark, silent shape of the piano. My most precious key. It wasn't a metaphor. He meant the piano. This piano. His grandfather wasn't just a driver in the army. He was the driver. The honest man. He hadn't bought this piano. He had been entrusted with it. He had smuggled it out, or helped smuggle it out, as a favor to a composer he'd met. A final, desperate promise to protect something beautiful from being destroyed. The treasure wasn't in the ground at some coordinates. The treasure was the piano, and the her he was supposed to find. Was it Amelie? Or was it the music itself, the lost work hidden within? Leo carefully placed the letters back in their bundle. He picked up the small leather notebook. He opened it. The pages were filled with more musical notation, but these were fragments, sketches, ideas. At the top of one page, written in a hurried, frantic scrawl, were two words that made the hair on Leo's arm stand up. Die Concert, the concerto. He was holding, he realized, not just a family secret. He was holding a piece of history that the world thought was gone forever. And his quiet grandfather, the postman who grew roses, had been its silent guardian for over half a century. The weight of that responsibility settled on Leo's shoulders, heavy and real. He couldn't just donate this to the local thrift store anymore. He had to finish what his grandfather started. He had to find it. The attic light was a single bare bulb, and under its weak yellow glow, Leo felt like he was in a cocoon of history. The outside world, his job, his apartment, the sale of the house had all faded into a distant home. Right here, on the dusty floorboards, was a puzzle his grandfather had left for him. A puzzle he didn't even know he was supposed to solve. He spread the letters out carefully. There were maybe a dozen of them, all from the composer, Heinrich Vogel, to the woman named Amelie. Using his phone's translation app was slow and clumsy, but it painted a picture. A love story, yes, but one wrapped in fear. The letters spoke of a deep love for music, and a deeper fear of the men who came to call. Not soldiers, but officials, cultural officials. They called Vogel's modern, beautiful music degenerate. They said it was a sickness from the past that needed to be erased to build a new, pure future. Vogel wrote that they wanted to burn his scores, to silence his voice forever. They see only politics in every note, one letter said. They cannot hear the heart. So, I will hide my heart where they will never look. Another letter. The last one, dated just a month before his grandfather's records showed he left Austria, was the most urgent. Vogel's handwriting was shaky. My dearest Amelie, it is time. The key is prepared. The honest man, the driver with the kind eyes, will take it. He asks for nothing. He sees a man afraid, and he offers help. It is that simple for him. I have told him it is a family heirloom, that it must get to America to be safe. It is not a lie. Our music is our family. It is our child. Keep the small sketches safe. The grand work is within the key itself. Remember the lullaby. Find the rest. I love you, always. Leo sat back. The key was the piano. That was clear. His grandfather, the driver with the kind eyes, had taken it, believing he was just helping a frightened man save a sentimental object. He probably thought he was smuggling a piece of furniture, not a cultural treasure. But what did the grand work is within the key itself mean? Was the lost concerto written on sheets hidden inside the piano? And what was the lullaby? Was that the elegy for Amelie? He turned to the small leather notebook. These were the small sketches Vogel mentioned. Pages were filled with musical ideas, a few bars of a melody here, a chord progression there. They were like the bones of a larger piece. On one page, next to a swirling, passionate set of notes, Vogel had scribbled in English, perhaps as a note to himself, the storm of the soul, brass and timpani here. On another, Amelie's theme, fragile, like crystal, solo violin. This was the blueprint. These were the ideas for the lost concerto. But the finished score, the complete masterpiece, was missing. According to the letter, it was inside the piano. Leo stood up and walked to the instrument. He opened the top, revealing the strings. He looked for anything taped to the soundboard, any unusual packets or compartments. He saw nothing but wood and wire and dust. He took the putty knife and gently tapped along the sides of the piano's inner casing, listening for a hollow spot. It all sounded solid. He was stuck. He had the letters, the notebook, the coded sheet music, and the piano itself. But the final secret, the physical treasure, was still locked away. He needed to understand the clue. Remember the lullaby. He picked up the handwritten sheet of elegy for Amelie again. A lullaby is a simple song, a gentle song. This elegy was sad, but it was also simple and repetitive in its melody. A lullaby of sorrow. He called his musician friend again. This time, he read him the translated lines from the letter. A lullaby, huh? His friend mused. In music, a lullaby often has a rocking rhythm, a repeating pattern. It's meant to soothe. That elegy you have, the right-hand melody does have a repetitive, rocking quality to it, but it's the bass line that's the cipher. Maybe the lullaby isn't the asterisk song asterisk itself. Maybe it's the asterisk action asterisk, the thing you do to a piano when you play a lullaby. What do you mean? Leo asked. Well, you rock a baby. You rock a cradle. What if you have to? Rock something on the piano? Or move something back and forth? An idea, faint and unformed, stirred in Leo's mind. He thanked his friend and hung up. He looked at the piano keys. He looked at the music stand, that little ledge that held the sheet music. It was fixed to the front panel of the piano, just above the keys. He remembered something. When he first opened the fallboard, it had creaked. But the music stand, he hadn't touched it. It was just there, flat against the panel. He reached out and gently tried to lift it. It was stuck tight. He tried to slide it sideways. Nothing. He examined the edges. It was a simple piece of hinged wood. He got his putty knife again and very carefully worked the tip into the seam. Where the stand met the piano's body, right at the hinge, there was a small click, not loud, but definite. He tried to lift the music stand again. This time, it moved, but it didn't just flip up to hold paper. The entire piece of wood, the stand, and a section of the front panel, it was attached to swung outward towards him, like a tiny door. It had been sealed shut by layers of old varnish and dust, hiding its true function. Behind it was a shallow, vertical compartment, and inside, rolled into a tight cylinder and tied with a black ribbon, was a thick sheaf of papers. Leo's hands trembled as he lifted the scroll out. It was heavy. He untied the ribbon, and the papers unfurled on the floor with a soft rustle. They were large sheets, bigger than normal paper, covered from edge to edge with dense, intricate musical notation. At the top of the first page, in that same elegant, now familiar hand, was the title, ***Concert for Clavier and Orchestra, **** for Amelie, **** beneath it, the dedication, ***to my love, my muse, my refuge. In sound, we are forever free, ***. This was it. The lost concerto, the grand work. Vogel hadn't just hidden sheets in the piano. He had built a secret compartment into its very face. The key literally held the treasure, and the lullaby was the action of rocking the music stand, the cradle of the score, to open it. Leo didn't need a translator for this. The music was its own language. He could see the passion in the storm of notes. The delicate beauty in the flowing melodies marked Amelie's theme. He carefully gathered the pages. There were over 50 of them, the complete, full orchestral score. But as he held this monumental find, a new, more pressing question crashed over him. The final line of the last letter, ***, I love you, always, ***, and the inscription on the elegy, ***, find her, ***, where was Amelie? Did she survive? Did she ever know what happened to her love's greatest work? His grandfather had gotten the piano out. But what about the woman? Leo knew what he had to do next. The historical discovery was one thing, but the human story, the promise in those words, was another. He had the music, but Vogel's final wish wasn't just for the music to be found. It was for ***, to be found. He carefully photographed every page of the concerto, making a digital backup. Then, he gently placed the precious score back into its compartment and closed the little door. Hearing the soft click of the latch, the piano was whole again, its secret known. He went downstairs to his grandfather's old desk. He turned on the computer and started a new kind of search. Not for musical codes or composer histories. He searched for records of immigration from Austria after the war. He looked for lists of survivors, for any mention of an Amelie with no last name. He combed through digitized archives from Vienna, looking for any trace. It felt like looking for a single star in a vast galaxy. He had a first name, a city, and a year. That was all. The task seemed impossible. But as he looked at the pixelated old documents on the screen, he thought of his grandfather, driving through a broken country, agreeing to take a heavy, awkward piano onto a ship for a man he barely knew, simply because it was the kind thing to do. Leo didn't have to drive a piano across an ocean. He just had to keep looking, For the first time, he wasn't doing this out of curiosity, or even out of a sense of historical duty. He was doing it because a man had loved a woman, had created something beautiful for her, and had begged the world, in his last desperate act, to help her find it. And his grandfather had been the first link in that chain. Now, it was Leo's turn. The treasure was no longer just papers in a compartment. The real treasure was completing the story. The glow from the computer screen was the only light in the small den. It was late, and Leo's eyes were tired from scrolling through endless digital archives. Names, dates, ship manifests. It was a sea of information, and he was trying to find one person with only a first name and a city to guide him. Amelia Vienna. It felt hopeless. He had tried everything. Public records from Austria were difficult to access and often incomplete. He found lists of people who had applied for visas, but they required a surname. He searched for any mention of Heinrich Vogel's personal life, but the composer had become a ghost after the war, and any records of a partner were seemingly erased. Frustrated, he leaned back in the old desk chair. It creaked, just like everything else in this quiet house. He looked around the room. This was where his grandfather would sit to pay bills, to write letters. A simple, orderly life. Yet, he had been the keeper of this incredible secret. He must have wondered, over all those years, about the people behind the piano. Did he try to find them? A new thought struck Leo. His grandfather was a man of action, not of computers. If he had tried to find Amelie, how would he have done it? Leo got up and went back to the file cabinet in the corner. He had looked through it for official documents. Now, he looked for something different. Personal letters, address books, receipts from overseas. He opened every drawer, feeling through the hanging files. In the very back of the bottom drawer, behind a stack of old tax returns, his fingers brushed against a small, hardcover book. He pulled it out. It wasn't an address book. It was a diary. A simple, 5-year diary with a faded green cover. His grandfather's handwriting, neat and compact, filled some of the pages. Leo's heart jumped. He brought it back to the desk. Most entries were mundane notes about the weather, the garden, the price of groceries. But Leo turned to the years just after the war. 1946, 1947. He found the entry dated the day his grandfather returned to the United States. Arrived home today. A long journey. Still have the piano in storage. I promised the man I would keep it safe until he or his friend could send for it. He gave me an address in Geneva to write to, for a lawyer friend. Have written twice, no reply. I hope the woman, Amelie, is safe. He loved her very much. It was in his eyes. I will keep the piano. A promise is a promise. Geneva. A lawyer friend. This was a thread. A real one. Leo quickly flipped through the following years. There were scattered mentions. 1951. Thought of the piano today. Still in the garage. Wondered about Vienna. 1958. Moved to the new house. Piano is heavy. Put it in the attic. It belongs there, out of the way. Still no word. 1972. Read about music in the paper. Thought of that sad composer. I hope she found some peace. And then, the final entry on the subject, in 1985. Getting old. The piano is just part of the house now. But I never forgot. If my grandson ever finds this, and wonders, the lawyer's name was Hartman. Franz Hartman. Geneva. Leo closed the diary. His grandfather had tried. He had written. He had waited. For decades, he had waited for a letter that never came. He kept his promise, not knowing if the people he made it to were even alive. The weight of that quiet, lifelong duty settled over Leo, even heavier than before. Hartman. Franz Hartman. Geneva. It was more than he had 10 minutes ago. The time difference meant it was morning in Europe. Leo, acting on a mix of desperation and momentum, began searching online for law firms in Geneva with the name Hartman. It was a long shot. The man would be ancient if he was still alive, or long gone. He found nothing current, but in a digital archive of a Swiss professional directory from the 1970s, he found it. Hartman and C. Notaires. Specialization. Successions Internationales. International Estates. The firm still existed, though under a different, merged name. Leo found a contact email. What did he have to lose? He composed a careful message. He explained he was the grandson of the American soldier who had corresponded with Dr. Franz Hartmann in 1946 regarding a piano belonging to the composer Heinrich Vogel. He was trying to fulfill a family promised to locate any surviving relatives, particularly a woman named Amelie. He attached a photo of the elegy for Amelie's sheet music as proof. He hit send. It felt like sending a message in a bottle into a vast, indifferent ocean. To days passed. Leo busied himself with securing the house, but his mind was elsewhere. He checked his email constantly. On the morning of the third day, a reply arrived. It was from the office manager of the modern firm. The email was polite and formal. Dr. Franz Hartmann had retired in 1982 and passed away in 1999. However, due to the specific and historical nature of his query, they had consulted their legacy archives. They had found a closed file under Vogel correspondence. Out of respect for client confidentiality, they could not share details. However, they could forward a letter to the last known contact associated with that file. If Leo wished, they could make no guarantees of a response. Leo's hope, which had flared brightly, dimmed again. A forward, a maybe, but it was the only thread left. He wrote back immediately, agreeing and thanking them. Another week of silence followed. Leo began to think the thread had finally snapped. He started making plans. He would contact a university music department. He would ensure the concerto was preserved, played, given back to the world. That was the important thing. Finding one specific, elderly woman in Europe was a fantasy. Then, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, his phone rang. The number had an international code, but not one he recognized. He answered. Hello. There was a pause and the sound of a breath. A woman's voice, aged but clear, with a soft European accent, came on the line. I received a forwarded email from Geneva, she said. Her English was precise. It spoke of a piano and an elegy. Leo's throat went dry. He sat down on the bottom step of the staircase. Yes, he managed to say. My grandfather was the driver. He brought the piano to America. He kept it safe. Another pause. He could hear the faint sound of traffic in the background. Somewhere far away, my name, the woman said, and her voice trembled just a little, is Amelie. For a moment, Leo couldn't speak. She was alive. The treasure wasn't just the music. It was the person the music was written for. Heinrich wrote that elegy for my birthday. She continued, her voice gaining strength as she spoke of the past. The year before everything darkened, he was always making little codes for me, games. He said the world was too loud, and we had to have our own quiet language. He hid the concerto in the piano. Leo said, we found it. The full score. It's here. It's all here. A soft sound came over the phone, like a sigh mixed with a sob. He finished it, she whispered. He told me he would. He said he would hide our child of sound where only a lullaby could find it. I never knew if he had time. She trailed off. Leo learned her story, bit by bit. In that long conversation, she had fled Vienna separately from Heinrich, as he made arrangements to hide his life's work. They had a plan to meet in Switzerland. She made it. He did not. He was detained, questioned, and though he was eventually released, the stress and heartbreak broke his health. He died in a small village in 1951, a broken man, with only his lawyer, Hartmann, knowing his true identity. Amelie had stayed in Switzerland, living a quiet life, always wondering what had become of the music, and of the kind American soldier Heinrich had written to her about. Who was supposed to be the courier? Your grandfather, she said. He wrote to Hartmann. I got the letters, but by then, it was 1948. I was afraid to reach back into that past, afraid it was a trick. I told Hartmann not to reply, to let it be. It was a mistake born of fear, a great mistake. Please, tell me, did he ever know? Leo thought of the diary entries, the years of quiet wondering. No, he said gently, he never knew, but he kept his promise. Every day, until he died, he kept it. There was a long silence on the other end of the line, filled with the weight of decades. The music, Amelie said finally, her voice firm now. It must be heard. That was his dream, not for fame, but because he believed music could heal what words could not. Will you do that? Yes, Leo said, without hesitation. But I want you to be a part of it, however you want to be. Another pause, then a small, warm sound that might have been a tearful smile. Perhaps, she said. For now, it is enough to know the silence is over. Thank you, Leo. Thank your grandfather. From my heart. When the call ended, Leo sat on the step for a long time, the rain pattering against the windows. He felt a profound sense of peace and a new purpose. The circle was almost complete. He had found her. Now, he had to finish the job. He He had to bring the forgotten music, and the love story it held, out of the attic and into the light. The months that followed were a whirlwind, but a quiet, purposeful one. Leo was no longer just a man clearing a house. He was a steward. The piano, the concerto, the story, it all felt like a fragile, priceless heirloom that had been passed directly into his hands. His first call was to the head of the music department at the local university. He was vague at first, just saying he had found an original manuscript that might be of historical interest. When the professor, a man with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, came to the house and saw the score, his reaction said everything. His hands shook as he turned the pages. He didn't speak for a long time. Finally, he looked at Leo, his eyes bright. This is a miracle," he whispered. "Heinrich Vogel's lost work. We thought it was gone, truly gone." From there, things moved with a life of their own. The university took the lead, handling the delicate work of preservation and authentication with a team of international experts. They confirmed it was genuine. News began to leak into the classical music world, a tremor of excitement at first, then a growing wave of anticipation. Through it all, Leo kept in touch with Amelie. They spoke every Sunday afternoon. Their conversations were no longer about the past, but about the present. She told him about her small apartment in Lausanne, the view of the lake, her cat. He told her about the slow process of restoring the piano itself, finding a craftsman who could make it sing again without erasing its history, the scratches, the worn keys, the story in its wood. The university planned a world premiere. It would be held in the city's grandest concert hall. The orchestra would be their finest. The soloist would be a renowned pianist who had championed other forgotten composers. It was all perfect, and it all felt a bit distant to Leo, like watching a magnificent machine operate. Then, the director of the project asked him a question. "The piano, the original piano. We'd like to use it for the performance. It would be historically profound. But it's your family's. What do you think?" Leo knew the answer immediately. He thought of his grandfather's hands on the steering wheel of an army truck, navigating ruined roads with a piano in the back. He thought of the piano sitting silent in the attic for half a century, holding its secret. It had to be there. It was the only way. "Yes," Leo said. "It has to be the one." The night of the premiere arrived. Leo stood backstage, wearing a suit that felt unfamiliar. He could hear the murmur of the sold-out crowd through the thick curtains. The air buzzed with a kind of electricity. He peeked out. The stage was set. The orchestra was tuning. And there, center stage, gleaming softly under the lights, was the old upright piano. It didn't look grand or imposing next to the sleek modern instruments. It looked proud. It looked like it had come home. The music director approached him, looking concerned. "Leo, our soloist. He's a brilliant artist, but he's used to concert grands. The action on your piano, even restored, is different, heavier. The tone is more intimate. He's struggling a bit to connect with it. He says it feels like playing a museum piece." Leo understood. The pianist saw a tool. But the piano wasn't just a tool. It was the key. It was the secret keeper. An idea, wild and terrifying, bloomed in his chest. He hadn't played seriously since he was a boy. He was not a performer. He was an analyst, but he knew this piano. He had felt its weight. He had heard its one dead note come back to life. He had found its heartbeat. "Let me talk to him," Leo said. He found the soloist, a man with intense eyes, in a small dressing room. "It's not responding," the pianist said, frustration in his voice. "It's like it doesn't want to be played." "It does," Leo said, his voice calm. "But you have to understand it. It's not a concert grand built for power. It was built for a secret. The sound is meant to be felt, not just heard. It's the sound of someone whispering a truth they couldn't say out loud." He walked over to the piano, which had been wheeled into the room. He didn't play the concerto. He played the first few, simple, rocking notes of the elegy for Amelie, the right-hand melody, the lullaby. The notes were soft, wooden, warm. They filled the small room not with volume, but with feeling. The soloist watched. His frustrated expression softened, then changed to one of deep thought. He walked over, motioned for Leo to move, and sat down. He played the same phrase, then a scale, then a chord. He listened to the decay of the sound, the particular resonance of the old wood. "I see," the pianist said quietly. "It's not an instrument. It's the narrator." The performance began. Leo took his seat in the front row, a special place reserved for him. The lights dimmed. The conductor walked out to applause. Then, he turned to the audience, and in a hushed voice, he told them the story. Not just of Heinrich Vogel, the lost composer, but of a driver with kind eyes, of a promise kept for a lifetime, of a love hidden in a code. He spoke of Amelie. He did not say where she was. Then, he raised his baton. The orchestra began with a low, trembling note, like distant thunder. The music of the concerto was not what Leo expected. It wasn't just sad. It was vast. It had fury in its blaring brass sections that sounded like protests. It had terror in its skittering, dissonant strings. And then, it had the most heartbreakingly beautiful melodies he had ever heard. The Amelie's theme from the notebook, now fully alive, soaring on a solo violin, and the piano. When the piano entered, it didn't try to overpower the orchestra. It spoke with them. Its sound was different from the sleek Steinway that usually sat there. It was more intimate, more direct. It sounded like a voice telling a story just to you. The pianist had understood. He wasn't fighting the instrument. He was listening to it, letting it tell its part. Leo was lost in the sound. He wasn't thinking about history or treasure anymore. He was feeling it. He thought he saw his grandfather in the music, in the steady, reliable rhythm of the lower notes. The promise kept. He saw Vogel's fear and his passion. He saw Amelie's love, woven into every gentle turn of phrase. As the final movement built to its climax, a powerful, triumphant resolution of all the earlier themes, Leo felt a hand on his shoulder from the aisle. He turned. An usher was there, leaning down. He whispered, "Sir, your guest has arrived." Leo excused himself and slipped out of the row. He walked up the dim aisle towards the back of the hall. Standing just inside the doors, out of the light, was a small, elegant woman with silver hair, leaning lightly on a cane. She was looking not at the stage, but at the piano. Her face was illuminated by the reflected glow from the performers, and her eyes shone with tears. He walked up to her. She turned her gaze to him, and she smiled. It was a smile that held a lifetime of sorrow and, now, a profound, peaceful joy. She didn't speak. She simply took his hand in hers. Her grip was surprisingly strong. Together, hand in hand, they stood in the shadows of the grand hall and listened. They listened as the concerto Vogel had written for her, hidden for her, found for her, swelled to its final, glorious chords. The piano and the orchestra united in a last, ringing statement of hope that seemed to shake the very air. When the last note faded into absolute silence, there was a moment of perfect, breathless quiet. Then, the audience erupted. People leapt to their feet, not just with applause, but with a roar of emotion. The sound was deafening. On stage, the pianist walked not to the conductor first, but to the old upright piano. He placed a hand on its wood, a gesture of deep respect. Then, he pointed into the darkness of the hall, towards where Leo and the woman stood. The conductor understood. He raised his hands, gently quieting the crowd. A single spotlight left the stage and swept through the audience, searching. It found them, standing together at the back. "Ladies and gentlemen," the conductor's voice echoed, filled with emotion. "The muse, Amelie, and the keeper of the promise, Leo." The spotlight was warm and bright. Leo felt Amelie's hand tighten in his. She didn't step forward to take a bow. She simply stood, straight and proud, and gave a slow, graceful nod of her head to the hall, to the orchestra, to the piano that had found its way back to her. The applause washed over them like a wave. But for Leo, the loudest sound was the one that had just ended. The silence was gone. The music had been returned. The promise, made by a kind driver so long ago, was finally, completely, fulfilled. The dusty piano wasn't just a piece of furniture. It was a bridge across time, and he had been the one to walk the last few steps. He looked at Amelie's radiant face, and he knew this was the treasure, not the fame, not the history books. This moment right here, this was what his grandfather had saved.